Hey everybody, welcome to today's live stream. I'm Mike LaFleche, the professor. Happy to join you all here to go over the latest Onshape update. The last update came out on Friday afternoon, just like normal. 1.197 is the designation for the release, and we have some really cool things in the latest update that are really, stuff that you'll use a lot, right? Like the S key customization stuff. Repair manager continues to, being able to update and repair your models based on changes that come in, able to figure out how to reattach references in a much better way that propagate forward throughout the feature tree in many cases. So that was exciting, as well as a number of Render Studio enhancements. Render Studio continues to receive a lot of love, and more and more, we're seeing very nice usability updates being provided. It's just such a pleasure to use the Render Studio as a photographer on the side. It's a lot of fun to be able to take pictures of your 3D models that you're making. So, um, let's get right into it. Let's get right into this. So, let's go full screen here. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I remember last time we did the stream, the audio was a bit suspect, but today I think we're gonna be good to go. So if anybody notices any weird, strange audio anomalies, let me know. I'm watching the comments here, and I have a side screen here of myself showing that I'm talking. So we'll keep on going. All right, well, let's start with the very, very first improvement. Let's just go full screen here so you can see the improvement a little bit better. And here's Cody Armstrong presenting on the repair manager. And essentially, I'll play this video first and then we can explain a little bit more. But, as you make changes to a design in any CAD system, right? Any parametric feature based CAD system, you're going to encounter issues like this, like you see on the screen, right? You're going to change something, or somebody else might change something, right? That's more common, right? Somebody else opens your model, they don't understand how the feature tree was built, and a change happens, and it causes, downstream features in your feature list here to, go out of date because, it can't find the reference is missing. Makes total sense. You can go back in and fix these at any time. This is the power of parametric CAD, right? This is why, all these years ago, we went to, from parametric CAD systems that we use today, from like the CSG type modelers. Like I remember when I was first using AutoCAD back in back in the day, AutoCAD 12 on DOS. And they had solid modeling. And if you wanted to make a part like this, you certainly could. But if you wanted to change a part like this, it would be very difficult because there was no feature list. You had to actually go in, and it was like making something out of a solid wooden block. And if I wanted to move the hole in the center or the side here, I would fill it in with a solid, add more geometry and remove geometry. It was very much like working with a very strange piece of wood that could grow and shrink. but but with Onshape and all the other parametric feature-based CAD systems with Pro Engineer, Creo, SolidWorks, this feature list was the thing that made it very easy to make changes. And being able to interact with this feature tree, is to your benefit as a design engineer, right? Knowing how to interact with that feature list. Now we've just made it easier to identify the first issue and have it auto correct the issue later on. That's what we're talking about right here. So let me just go screen again. You can see in this particular example, there are a number of issues. And if we edit the healthy moment of that sketch, we get the panel on the right-hand side showing us the previously good state of that model. It puts us in the repair window. It's showing us in our sketch plane at the top of the screen right here as I'm hovering around, there's a missing face of something, right? Um, so you'll notice if you hover right above the missing feature, it's gonna give you a replace reference button now, and that's brand new. Previously we had the button here underneath the sketch profiler button to go into the constraint manager and identify a bunch of things in the sketch. This is another button here, right in the sketch selector for the sketch plane. You'd see the replace reference. You want to replace the reference of the sketch plane, essentially. That's what it's going to allow us to do. And from here, we're gonna change one face to another, right? So the missing face for sketch one, is this front face right here. And we're gonna go into the constraint manager, make the edits just so we can replace the concentric relationship. And now we have our part that went missing previously, right? So essentially, I can show you this on a really simple example in real life here. Um, let's say we had this box, right? Um, and you can see I have an extrusion here that has an issue, right? And I can edit that healthy moment, and we have that missing face reference, right? So that's right there in an extrude box as well. So you can see this will appear, in any box where it makes sense. So if I choose replace reference, the replace is going to have, there's no other future uses of this. So you're not seeing the second half of that dialogue that you saw on Cody's screen earlier. So the selection to replace with, right now it's this top face right here. You can see right here that was the missing face. I could pick that face right here, and it will bring it back right here. Now I could also choose other faces, right? Oh, and by the way, let me just undo that. I'm just using a Command Z on my keyboard here to go back. Did you know that you could do undo and redo right inside of the selections right here? It's just Control or Command Z, right? Depending on if you're on a Mac or Windows. You can also clear the missing references here if you just want to right click there and clear it out. Make that the new reference, and now I've replaced that reference moving forward there. So that is essentially the replace reference there. But I think Cody's example is a little bit better because if you look at it, that we have downstream features being propagated, right? So if we look right here, let me just pause that, make sure it doesn't go past it. You can see when we have something that's being used further down the feature tree, it will identify that in the replace reference dialog. You can check that box and it can show you which changes are going to be affected. So we had a whole feature tree that went wrong, but there were really only two things in it that caused it to all go wrong. Okay, so that's sketch 2, which was the extrusion for that side piece here labeled. We'll see what it's called as soon as we hit green. Yeah, the coupler. So that caused that to go awry. But very easy to fix these things now with the repair manager, inside of Onshape. Next up, shortcut key improvements. I love the S key inside of Onshape, and I'm sure you all do as well. So if you want to customize the S key for things that are common across parts, assemblies, drawings, etc., right? You can now do that for several commands. So let's get in and customize my interface here. I'm going to open up something a little more interesting than that block. We'll go into my friend the jackhammer. I think we'll go into my consumer products folder here. There's the jackhammer. And I'll open up the main document for the jackhammer. Because I like going in the section views and slicing and dicing, the model and stuff, right? I've opened this with workspace protection, as you can tell. right here on my main branch. It's protected. Right? That's why it opened in a read-only state like that. But that's okay. I can hit the letter S on my keyboard. Actually, let's go into a workspace where we can edit. Go to the render workspace. That's where we'll be anyway in a few minutes. All right. So you can see there's my S key, right? I hit letter S on the keyboard and I get my pop-up toolbar. Now I go into section view quite a bit. Now I've customized lots of things on my Onshape interface, like Shift X is what I typically use for doing a section view, right? And that's a quick and easy way of getting to it. What if I don't have my keyboard handy and I just have my mouse, right? The S key I've programmed to my, I got one of these like Logitech mice with all the buttons on it, right? Which most engineers have something like that, right? I've customized it to program one of those buttons to the S key on my keyboard, right? And I want to customize that so I have further power and I don't have to go to my keyboard to hit Control or Shift X to go to section view. So you'll see down here at the bottom of all of your shortcut toolbars, I have a general section now where I have, some choices for my viewing tools that make sense to have across all of my different viewing modes, right? So if I'm in a part studio, I certainly, want to go to section views and measure and all that just as much as I do in assembly. Maybe even a drawing, right? Your drawings are going to have, let's do assembly right here. Yeah. So let's say section view, mass properties, and measure are going to be on my assembly toolbar. And part studio will do the same. I think that makes sense. I don't think it makes sense anywhere else. All right. So I'm going to refresh my document here. There we are. Hit the letter S or the programmed button on my keyboard, right? Or my mouse, I should say. And now I have those buttons right here. Section view, pick something round, items to exclude. I don't want it to cut through the power components and maybe everything in the drivetrain. Yeah, I'll just go right into the drivetrain or power folder. So I can pick those things right from there too, which makes it a lot easier to deal with my section planes. If I rotate around like that, we're going to get a nice view of what's happening, right? All right, so measure as well. If I want to hit the letter S to get to measure now, I can do that really quickly, right? There's my section view. Looks good. Then I can click measure and start, measuring, what the different distance is between various objects, and it pops right up wherever my mouse is. So that's going to save me a lot of space time. Space time, yeah. It'll save you a lot of space time. All right. So anything we can do to customize the interface is something I'm a big fan of. So definitely just use the letter S on the keyboard or program that letter S to a mouse button or whatever you have for input device. I use a variety of things. If I look down here on my keyboard, I use like one of these things as well. It's like a loop deck, and I can program buttons to it as well. Onshape works just fine with those types of things as well. All right, let's keep on going. So next up in the improvements list is Render Studio. And I wanted to do something special for Render Studio. And the reason is because there's been a lot of love, being shown to the Render Studio interface in the last several updates. So I thought I would highlight some of those with a little bit of a live rendering session. Kind of highlighting some of those latest things. Like, if you remember back to February, we did OpenVDB volumetric rendering, which allow you to add smoke, fog, water effects, those kinds of things to your design. So if you had this nice Perrin Le Mans car, you wanted to show the smoke, if it was doing a burnout or something like that, you could totally do that. Um, and all you have to do is model like a square, a cube, or a cylinder. You don't have to model smoke. That's another animal altogether, right? So all you have to do is model something simple and apply this OpenVDB parameter to it, and it gives you the effect. Back in March, the quick texture attachment and reset appearance to default, which is great. Like if you're right rendering this car and you want to go back to the default color that was defined in the design environment and in the part studio versus what you dragged and dropped in the render studio, you can go back and reset it very quickly. There's a bunch of other quick texture attachment updates that were applied in 1.195 as well. Back to April. A lot of big things that were added in the first April release of Onshape. This release 1.196 was importing scene settings from another rendering that you loved, you built up over time, and you wanted to bring in that rendering. You could totally just bring that in. And then plus making, when you do a render, um, have it render with the same output quality. Like, you want it to be 4K, you want it to be this size, you want it to be, this location, all the settings were persistent instead of you having to set those every single time. So big time saver there. And then finally, this release. And the field of view control is a bit more it makes more sense, if you're a camera person. You also have some UI improvements as far as the scene list being a dual view, meaning the appearances and the parts are in a split pane. I'll show you that in a minute. And then we'll do our advanced scene list filters as well. So let's hop right in to that. So here we are in our jackhammer. And, I believe I probably have a render studio already in here. So I'll just click into the render studio that lives internal to this document. Now, of course, if you didn't have a render studio, if you wanted a new render studio with different elements all together in it, you can have multiple render studios in your document, right? Like that's one thing you can do. You can say render studio top level, right? Then you might have another render studio, instruction manual or something, right? You might be taking different images. You might just be looking at um, a subassembly of some sort of thing, right? Maybe just a housing assembly right there. So I'll just go back to the one that I've already built, and I'll choose Edit Render Studio because that one I've already created. I'll just close the tab manager here on the side. And you'll already notice while the geometry is loading up that we have a difference in our UI on the left-hand side of the screen. By the way, I'm going to go to dark mode because I just like dark mode when I'm doing rendering. I'll go full screen here so it looks a little nicer here. All right, so it's loading that up, tessellating it into the quality that we told it to have. By the way, the tessellation quality is something that you can configure and control inside of Onshape in the native design environment as well as the rendering environment. So, here is my UI. Let me just collapse the bottom library section. All right. Let's zoom in over here like this. Oh, let me click into that again. All right. Edit Render Studio. And then, this is a pretty full size, model. There's nothing abstracted in this. It's the full 3D model that's good for design and manufacture. I haven't created a simplified version of this jackhammer or anything like that for the rendering. I know that's sometimes something people will do. And it's sometimes recommended if you have like a really big assembly, there's nothing inside of it that you need to render, you might create a configuration or a state of your model that has something that has a configuration, and Onshape totally supports the ability to, have a configuration of the jackhammer or whatever design that you want to bring in with a simplified representation. All right, there we are. So collapse the library area, and you can see the appearances are right below the scene list, which really kind of makes it a little nicer to see, what's going on. So if I'm selecting stainless steel one or, hex socketed cap screw, it's gonna, highlight the appearance as well, I believe. If I try that again. I'm gonna select all of the same parts here. Select matching instances for the hex screw. It looks like there's only two of them being highlighted here on the screen, like that, as you can see. And with those two selected, I could then, make them aluminum 380 from here instead of like searching through like my material library down here below and trying to figure out which one I picked. I can actually pick one that I've used already, right? Um let's see. I can also filter through here. So I want to filter anything with a decal. And there it is. There's a decal. If I look underneath here, there's the actual, decal that came in from when I created that in Onshape, right? That comes in through Onshape. We added that, I forget. I guess it was a little earlier. I guess it wasn't in 2025. All the updates I pulled were 2025 updates in that previous slide. But the decal coming over automatically from the CAD model was something that was added fairly recently as well. So being able to filter your list now on these different things, I want to find anything with an error. Doesn't look like there are any. I want to find all the hidden parts. Whenever you're like going in and hiding parts because you want to like get in and like add things to the inside, that I'm going to hit the letter Y. I'm going to select the button, hit letter Y. Guess what? The letter Y, that custom keyboard shortcut, is the same keyboard shortcut in the CAD environment as well as the rendering environment for hiding and showing, right? So now, I can see the hidden parts being collected, in this filter, which is really important so I can bring these back, and show them all again. All right. So how do I make a nice rendering that looks like, well, maybe not that one. That was not great. That's setting on the ground or something. You might even want to show it, with an environment like this, but I want to do a better job, than this. You need to get different background images from a website called Polyhaven. That's going to be my recommendation. So, if I'm back in the render studio and I want to, add some sort of environment, I'll pick something outside, apply lighting and background. And it looks like we're probably looking up at the sky. There we are. We'll put this thing on the ground. Now you can see here how the jackhammer is not laying on the ground at all right now. We need to rotate that thing 90 degrees. And that's something you can do in the rendering environment. You don't have to go to the CAD, geometry model to do this. You just go in and you can choose to rotate it. And that's what this button here is for. Transform. I can rotate, and I have on-screen manipulators to kind of help out. So I'll just rotate it. I'll start going that way. It looks like that's it. I'll say -90. And we'll say okay. And now that thing's right on the ground, just like that. And I'm holding my middle mouse button down, I'm dragging it around on the ground. Now, the what's kind of unfortunate here is the resolution of this image, right? It's a little bit, it's kinda grainy, right? It's not high resolution. Um, this is called what is it called? Abandoned Slipway, alright? Now, I told you there's a site called polyhaven, .com, and this is a site where you can download, different environments, textures, and these are all fully supported with the Onshape Render Studio. So if I can go outdoor and store to browse, or I can search, for, you know, a slipway. And there's the actual abandoned slipway right here. But I could actually download it in higher resolution, right? 8K, between 4 and 8K will give you a really nice looking background. I'll download that. It's an HDR file. So that's now in my downloads. And if I go to my appear or my side panel here, I can go to my click right here, environment, and I can see the abandoned slipway is being used. But I'll go to the custom image and I'll import a new HDR file, right? That's a pretty big file, 25 megs. We'll let that come on in. Takes a minute. I'll create a version as well. Everything in Onshape Render Studio is version controlled, of course. All right. Once that's ready, I will select that as the image. Maybe I was a little impatient. Yeah. All right. There's the HDR file. Uploaded that. Let me set the version. All right. Now I will select an image. All right. If I slip away, there it is. And this might take a second, but you're going to see the image upgrade in quality a little bit more. Now, another thing you can do, something that we have an option for, is this thing called a hemispherical dome model. And it kind of does a better job of, like, when you rotate it around. I'm using right click and drag to rotate. You see how we're rotating around the environment inside of this dome. So it's taken our photo and kind of flattened it, near the ground. And you can change this flattening effect by changing the tripod height. If I change this to like 5,000, you'd see difference. Go to 1250, right? It depends, on the image. If I go 50,000 here, you're going to see a really flat, spread out environment. But if I go back down to 1250, it's looking, a little bit good. And then, what I do is go to depth of field. As a photographer, I'm going to tell it where I want to focus on. And you notice I'm doing this all in like a very tessellated way while I'm doing my setup. Once I want a full render, I'm going to crank up the tessellation rating so this becomes more circular and all that. Um, but yeah, that's looking pretty good. If I go into my depth of field and set it to like a really nice camera lens, like a 1.4 lens, this is where it really starts to look good, right? Go 2.8. All right. So I like the way that's looking. We got our split manager here. We can let's go to our appearances and add a couple of better looking materials. I want some black smooth rubber on all the pieces of the handle. In fact, I can search for the handle right here. Here's the handle assembly, and this just makes it wicked easy to assign to all those parts at once, right? That's going to be the way to do it. And of course, you might, just change. I think I have that piece right there. This pin, probably not made of rubber. Oh, there were some other appearances uh, kind of overriding it. I'm going to clear those appearances with that message. And now you can see all turned rubber. All right. Now that I like the way everything's looking, I'm going to change my tessellation for at least the round parts, right? I'm going to take this part right here. It's found one of the faces. Let's just scroll up to the name of the part. That's the cylinder housing. I'm going to change the tessellation of that one part from auto to very fine. And it puts a little diamond on top of it so you know you've overridden the that housing, or with the later more fine resolution. And that's looking much better, right? All right. Now, and you see it took this green face from the model as well, indicating that was like a machine face. That was just something we did on the CAD model. We'll go to our power as well and apply the rubber. There's the power cord. Sign that. Clear any extraneous face relations or face references that were there. And if you have an eagle eye, you can see that the cylinder here also is, a little bit lower tessellation ink sleeve. I'll just increase that to very fine as well. I mean, I could have done the whole thing, but it's not really necessary. It's just going to add calculation time, to your rendering. That doesn't need to be there. So just pick the big round parts that look a little jagged, increase the resolution on those, and you'll be good to go. So I have a pretty good looking photorealistic rendering almost right now, but you want to hit the final render, go up to the resolution you want. I'm using just the Render Studio Standard. If I upgraded it to Render Studio Advanced, I could get 4K and more output. But for something that I'm going to view on the internet, this will be just fine. Production quality at 1920 by 1080 HD resolution. I will render that. And, I'm just, being a photographer right inside of Onshape. And while that's rendering, essentially, just to kind of review, in this update, we added the advanced scene list filters, being able to find things quickly in the list. And that dual pane makes it easy to kind of go back and forth between the appearances and the components. Oh, and I didn't show you the field of view control yet. So let's do that, once this is done rendering. But essentially the field of view control, actually I can show it to you right here while it's rendering. There it is. We're using a 35 millimeter lens field of view now instead of just typing in a weird angle. Now, if I said I want a 18 or 16 millimeter lens, that's what it would look like, right? Or if I wanted a 50 millimeter lens. At that same distance of viewing it, our focal length is set at that, right? So, there's a big telephoto zoom lens, right? So much easier to understand if you've ever taken a photo with a real camera. This is, the way you would do it, right? Uh, let me render the scene again. So that looks like a nice wide angle lens, just like that. I think it's actually still rendering in the background because this thing says stop right now. So I've never done this before. I'm running this live, so I've never changed my settings while the rendering was happening. So I'm sure it's going to continue to render as I had set it previously. And then, once it's done rendering, I can hit render again and get my wide angle fisheye shot. Let's look at the top here, see if it's included any rendering in there yet. Maybe not. Let me just render it again. I'm not sure if it's gonna do what I said. Of course, while it's rendering, I could do other non-rendering things, or I could go to another render studio tab altogether if I had two different render projects that I was working on simultaneously. If I was somebody in the marketing department or something like that that did this all day, every day, that might be a good workflow. All right, we'll let that continue on. But it's pretty fun to do. I'd like to do some more rendering sessions like this. I have the idea of taking that parent car that you've seen me do some renderings on lately on the LinkedIn channel. If you follow me there, I'd like to do a project on how I went about rendering that with the LED lights and everything too. We'll make it a special session just for that purpose. Um, if anybody's interested in other types of techniques, just comment here and be happy to take a look at other projects. But I think it is done rendering now. So while maybe I'll take another couple of shots, while I get the next one looking, while I look at the next one. So I'll render that one. So while that's rendering, I can sort my Onshape document based on images, right? Here it is. That's the new image right there. And that's the full HQ version, of that image. And you can see how much it looks like an actual photo, with all these settings. All right. So I think that is really all I had to show you today. If we looked at the change log, for the release, I think, did I close everything? I guess I closed everything. Oh no, there we are. So of course, if you want to look at the change log, go to what's new, scroll to the bottom here, and there's the change log. We spent a lot of time on this particular update addressing performance and other customer issues. So you're going to notice that the list of brand new updates to the Onshape system were a little bit pared back because in this update we really wanted to spend some time, going through some things that were that we really wanted to get to on the back end of the system, and we had an opportunity to do that this time, and that's what we did. So, a number of things, if you're in different parts of the software, but we saw support for propagating changes in the repair manager, S key customization, um, support horizontal resize of non-feature dialogues like mass properties and analytics tools. Let's take a look at that. Might as well, right? So if we go open up the mass properties of the jackhammer assembly, and if I click the actual jackhammer, we'll get some information in here. But I can clearly see that, as it has prescribed, I can even make it skinnier than normal. That's kind of nice to see it in a skinny way right there on the side, or across like this, right? So that's really nice, actually. Nice little hidden analysis tools. All the analysis tools under here, I imagine, like interference detection. Yeah. Because an interference detection on a big assembly like this could be a really big report, right? You want to kind of dive in, on all of these different things, right? So having a bigger or smaller panel to work with is kind of nice, and I can tell to also include the hardware standard content as well. All right. See if there's any other Easter eggs in here. Feature script improvements and performance is always good. Cam Studio, if you're on that using Onshape Cam Studio, there's some UI updates to make things more clear and a number of fixes. So, really, solid update. Happy to join. Uh, happy for everybody here on the call to join me here and learn what's new and also share some rendering time with me. But I think that's pretty much all that's fit to print today. So thank you again. Appreciate you all joining me. And in 3 weeks, we'll have another one of these, right? So hopefully we'll have some fun things to talk about. Definitely let me know if you have any questions. The comment feed is live. I can look at that in the future. And this is recorded. You can watch it anytime. All right. Have a great day, everybody.